10th day of November 2024. Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm going to be your host. I'm Dana. Hope you're doing well. You can call her ring-a-ding-a-lingy at 1709-589-4406 in Canada. We got 4 reactors melted down and 8 fuel pools. It's 100% meltdown in all of the buildings. And we're talking about how people should be dressed instead of the reality. But everybody had a good weekend, if that's possible anymore. Thanks to the nuclear industry. If you've been investing in nuclear industry any time in the past, you have been hurting. The nuclear industry is the nuclear industry using a false nuclear renaissance to loot unsuspecting small modular reactor stock investors? And that is exactly what has been taking place for 6 years in particular straight. And it's a cycle every 2 weeks or something like that. They'll find, you just had Amazon said they were going to use small modular reactors, which don't exist. And Google's going to use small modular reactors, and they're going to invest in this company. They don't exist, right? And it's all meant to drive the stocks up. Pretty desperate. You see this every year before Christmas. It gets even worse. And then the investors, because they have stocks, right? So the investors show up because they believe the stocks are going to rise. That's what they're told. And next thing you know, they lost their life savings to people that work. What was that? Let me fix that. I'm all about fixing shit today. If I can fix this. Let me get that back out of the way. We got a big news cycle tonight. Why NuScale power stocks jumped. NuScale, of course, all the investors pulled out of them last year. For all accounts and purposes, they went bankrupt. They were re-imaged. Motley Fool, the Motley Fool. We don't cover them only when it's about stocks and about propaganda, right? So there's 2 types of stocks that the nuclear industry is robbing the unsuspecting investors with. It's the uranium stocks, and now the biggest scam we've ever seen in a long time is it's a Ponzi scheme, the small modular reactors. They don't have a product. They don't have a reactor. They don't have a site. They don't have an application, and NuScale has an application in, but it's not a full application. There's no plans on the table to build a small modular reactor at any of the national laboratories, which is where you would build them originally. And they're on the stock market. It's 100% a scam, every facet of it. That's what they do. They scam. And they got a million schemes and scams. And Globe and Mail in Canada was one of the worst ones we've seen now for post-Fukushima. 13 years of every 4 or 5 times a week you'll see them push uranium stocks, now small modular reactors, and even again the fusion reactors. They don't have applications for the licenses into the regulatory agencies. They don't have a design. In the 100 small modular reactors companies, they don't have a design. In the 100 fusion reactors, none of them has an application into the regulatory agency to build a prototype, let alone a working reactor. They're decades away. Has any of the investors really realized they're going to tie their money up for decades? And along the way, these companies are almost 99% likely to go under, not before they accumulate enormous wealth, personal wealth. And there's just a ghost company. If it goes bankrupt, there's no assets to sell off. So the investors are 100% going to lose their entire inventories. And the stock market regulatory agencies are okay with that. How's that even possible? Don't worry, Superman's going to fix anything that goes wrong. He's immune to radiation. So is the Hulk, Danny. He's immune to radiation. They'll fix everything. Because the real world doesn't matter. It only matters this fake nuclear renaissance routine. Small modular reactor nuclear technology is catching the attention of some of the world's biggest companies. The technology doesn't exist. There's 100 different designs and none of them come to fruition. What does that tell us? Do you really got to be a Einstein to comprehend that 2 and 2 equals scam in this case? It's just outrageous, eh? To poison you with radiation. All the nuclear disease factories are surrounded by farms. The red hot nuclear energy stock is made red hot. This is not red hot. Like, what are you talking about, red hot? Has made investors filthy rich. Just hang on a second. Give me a hard time here tonight. I couldn't read the bottom part of my screen. My apologies. Nothing else is. Nothing's unusual around here anymore. You know, the only stocks that are grown is the 30 million one-ton bags of radiation they picked up in Fukushima. If you got stocks in the one-ton plastic bags, you're making some serious coin. Small modular reactor is catching the attention of some of the world's biggest companies. Well, like the Hulk or Spider-Man. You know, they were created by the nuclear industry. Like, they were created by other people, but then they were taken by the nuclear industry and used to indoctrinate your children so they become complacent about every facet of the insidious nuclear waste. And the problem with nuclear waste is it's still splitting atoms. They're floating around looking for your children and the birds and the bees. NuScale is building small modular reactors. Well, is not even trying to build one. It doesn't have a whole application into a regulatory agency. The regulatory agency hasn't made a peep in 2 years about the application. Not a peep. Not saying we're getting close or looking good or just reported a lower net loss and a bigger cash balance. How can you have a lower net loss and a bigger cash balance? Well, they don't got a product. They're just taking money from the next investor to pay off the last investor. We know it as a Ponzi scheme. Spider-Man is literally the worst enemy you can do for your child, is give them anything with Spider-Man or the Hulk or Superman on it. It's literally the worst thing you can do to your child is put that creature, because you can't be a hero as long as those creatures exist. Their grandparents can't be heroes as long as these creatures exist. You can't compete with the Hulk and Spider-Man and Superman. You simply can't compete with it, right? Oh my goodness. How are you going to compete with stuff like that? Like, how are you going to compete with Spider-Man in front of for your children? You can't. How are you going to compete with any of these bizarre creatures? Right? You can't compete against them, see? They're your children's heroes, not the grandparents, not the aunts, not the uncles. All they do is destroy your children's ability to recognize the parents for who they really are. And the grandparents and the aunts, the uncles, the ones who actually love them. Superman doesn't love your children. Spider-Man doesn't love your children. The Hulk doesn't love your children. They're a fictional entity used by the nuclear industry to separate you from your children. The nuclear energy stock is up a staggering 550% in 2024. Yeah, because we went bankrupt in the first part of the year, so it's easy for the stock to look impressive when you get a few dollars thrown into it by the nuclear industry. Artificially inflated. The investors, the original investors, are all suing NuScale. because NuScale robbed them of their investments and used it for a Ponzi scheme. Because they're part of the government is easy. It's easy to protect them. It took only a couple. This is absurdness times infinity, by the way. It took only a couple of non-company Pacific events in October to send NuScale power stock surging. Anybody guess what that is? It took only a couple of non-company. The company didn't make the stock surge. It was the fictional thought that Amazon and everybody else was going to. The truth doesn't matter. It's just all the fiction. It was driven almost entirely by the industry events. So the recent stock run up in recent months, it wasn't. It was done by the public relation firms. When Alphabet, which is Google, signed an agreement with Kiro's Power to buy nuclear energy from several small modular reactors that don't exist, and they don't have an application into the regulatory agency. Magically, stocks went up. You're talking about something, who knows when in the future, 10, 20, 30 years in the future probably, if it even comes to fruition, when geothermal is the only thing that's really coming to fruition. There's 660 gigawatts of solar power this year worldwide. There was no new nuclear added to the grid, and there certainly won't be any small modular reactors added to the grid in the next decade. It'll take them a decade just to get through the licensing and to start to raise the funds then to build a prototype on one of the national laboratory sites, right? In Canada, it would be Chalk River. In the United States, it would be Los Alamos National or some of the other national laboratories. So a couple of days later, e-commerce giant Amazon announced multiple deals back in nuclear energy. That all fell through. They knew it wasn't going to go through. And they cashed in their stocks, though, I bet you, just before the regulatory agencies pulled the plug on it. Pump and dump, but it affects millions of unassuming investors. These people are wolves. This is a predatory industry. Why is NuScale stocks going up when NuScale is the least likely of all the small modular reactor fake companies to even come close to having a prototype? They're the least likely. They're tied up in lawsuits for a decade. Who knows how long they'll drag that out in court? Although, and they didn't do it on their own. This was driven by Amazon, driven by Alphabet, driven by Facebook. Although NuScale Power is nowhere in the picture, nor did it announce any deal of its own. The stock still zoomed more than 50% because they were shitty low stocks because they lost all their investors. And so the investors out there who didn't know what happened said, well, hey, that's low stocks. I'm buying that. That's all you're going to get is a stock. You're not ever going to cash it in. So more than 50%. NuScale. Now, we covered this last week. But we didn't think the scam was that big. How can a worthless stock rise 50% in a single week just because Meta or Alphabet or Amazon claimed that they were going to buy power from something that doesn't exist? If that's not a filthy, despicable, disgusting industry, what actually is? That's why Stinky, the pro-nuclear retard, is back. Hi, Stinky! Hello, Dana! Oh, a little bit of competition there. Let me try the other screen. Stinky's back, baby. I'm going to redo him tomorrow. He's going to get a really good job. He's got more hair than I do. Are you Stinky? Yeah, Dana. Stinky knows. Stinky's a nuclear industry corrupt. Oh, God, they're corrupt. You don't know, Dana. I do, Stinky. Stinky, the pro-nuclear scumbag. Did you make a lot of money on the small modular reactor stock, Stinky, the pro-nuclear scumbag? Dana, you got no idea. I went and picked up a bunch of stuff today. Stinky's getting a makeover. Stinky's getting a makeover. Yeah, then the nuclear industry is going to get it right, Stinky. Dana Stinky. Knows. Stinky, the pro-nuclear scumbag. There's one in every nuclear industry. He's called the CEO. Where'd Dana go? Dana! I gotta stop. I don't like that just pop up showing up. Let me just fix that because I think it should be a zoom, some kind of trajectory. Oh, this one here. This is it. This is what it's all about right there. No, I want the one that goes up in the corner. Hang with me. Just hang with me for a second. I want the one that goes up in this corner. I'll never find it, eh? Because I want it, I'll never find it. Yeah, it must be this one. One more try. Oh, that's it. And I zoom in from that corner. Oh, I like it. Just make me a bit bigger there. There we go. So they didn't announce anything of their own. They didn't have any deals, but their stocks climbed right through the ceiling. They were the worst stocks out there. NuScale was the worst, and still is, the worst stocks out there. It just grew 50%. Now they just went bankrupt again. They got all their money back now they're going to pay the investor backs with the money they robbed from the other investors, right? That's what they're doing. Stinky. NuScale Power is still years away from commercializing its flagship. Years away. Decade. Its flagship small modular reactor power plant. It doesn't expect to deliver its power modulars before 2028. Like, what are you talking about? How can you deliver nuclear power without going through the regulatory agencies for the license and without building a prototype and then running it to the ground to see if it gives up the ghost? It's going to take you 15, 20 years. So so they're only doing that to try to they're getting ready to artificially inflate the stocks again. They're robbing the investors to pay off the other investors that they robbed earlier. This Ponzi scheme, ever since it meets every facet of that connotation, right? NuScale's power small modular reactor design is the first to be certified. Again, that's not true. It's not certified. They have an application in that was rubber stamped, but they got to wait until they get the actual whole application in before they can go ahead and try to build a prototype. Right? Another scam because they're part of the government. And they wanted to give the nuclear industry a little boost. Well, turns out what they want to do is rob all the unsuspecting investors that are looking for stocks and have bought into the false hype that there's a nuclear renaissance. There is no nuclear renaissance. If you know of a nuclear renaissance, call in. Tell me where the nuclear renaissance is. So you can call in at 709-589-4406 and tell us how there's a small modular reactor renaissance, because I can assure you there's not, right? Got to put a hard hat on the puppet. I like it. Because that's what I was looking for, like some kind of cap or something like that. I like that idea, James. That's brilliant. What color should I give him? I wonder, a hard hat. There's a few different colors, right? White's not the boss, so I got to be one of the boss's color. I got to go look for some pictures of the lapdogs hanging around Raphael Grossi in the pictures. I've got them there somewhere. The company has also has engineering and construction giant Fluor's backing, which is part of the military-industrial complexes. So they've been down to Hanford just looting the taxpayers down there for what, 34? No, since it started. They helped build it originally. Had previously received funding from the Department of Energy and has no debt. No, no debt if you don't want to count the investors who are suing him in civil court. Right, this is what do you call them? A class action lawsuit from all the communities that invested hundreds of millions of dollars each. NuScale Power just reported its third quarter numbers, ended the quarter with a cash and equivalence balance of around $162 million. Up 19% over year. How can they grow that much? How can they have that much money, cash, sitting on when they don't even have a product? It's an unbelievable scam, isn't it? And they're targeting the investors who don't know any bigger so they can rob them. That's how they built their houses and got all their cars and sports boats and swimming pools, just robbing the mom and pops who worked all their lives, robbing their life savings. They really are the worst people conceivable. NuScale Power, however, remains a speculative bet on the very last paragraph, the very last sentence. And anyone betting on the stock after its recent run-up should be aware, run-up! They all getting a run-up every 2 weeks, aren't they? Thanks to people like motley fools. It's an appropriate name, isn't it, for someone that's going to rip off the investors to call them fools. After its recent run-up should be aware of the risk of investing in a company that is yet to make its first saleable product. Yet to make it! It hasn't even built a prototype, which are enormously difficult and expensive and resource intensive. They're sitting on big bags of cash now. Those stocks just crashed. They were up 50%, now they're down 50%. By the way, John Mackay, the former CEO of Whole Foods Markets, an Amazon subsidiary, is a member of the Motley Fool's board of directors. An Amazon subsidy company. A former CEO. And Susan Frey's an executive at, you guessed it, Google / Alphabet. And is a member of the Motley Fool's board of directors. How friggin' convenient. Unbelievable, isn't it? And then they come out with this story. After such doing it's like if you went into a bank and done it, it's robbery, right? You go to jail for life. If you do it to the investors who worked like a dog all their life and saved up their pennies and retired, and you steal it from them, the lowest forms of life. They really are the lowest forms of life. Japanese mountain community's first baby in 52 years celebrates their first birthday. The first baby in 52 years, probably the last one after Fukushima nuclear meltdowns. A whale shark, about 6 to 7 meters long, spotted in the southwestern Japan rivers. They don't belong in rivers. I got a shitty old hack here tonight. That's not good. I believe I'm coming down with the flu. Break out the peroxide. Spray the old jugular veins. Peroxide's really good at. You should actually wash your whole body in peroxide. Just to 3%, right? So a whale shark goes up a freshwater river. Whale sharks, it rejected the ocean apparently because of Fukushima, no doubt. According to the victim still living in a nuclear wasteland, the large fish was spotted swimming about 1 kilometer upstream from the mouth of the river of a nearby residence just before noon on the 5th. Looks like a large fish. No, it looks like a shark. Fishes don't have big dorsal fins sticking out of the water. It's a whale shark. What's it doing on land? What's it doing? Whale sharks don't do that. Whale sharks don't do that. You don't expect the media to inform the population that that's not natural. Whale sharks don't do stuff like that, look. Recount in South Bruce, Canada. She just had a referendum to put a deep geological repository for the 5.5 million fuel assemblies we have in Canada. The CANDU MOX reactors. They're not really MOX reactors, but might as well be. Their releases are ridiculous. It appears unlikely. Recount in South Bruce referendum appears unlikely. So it's supposed to be like a willingness. There was one of the places up there didn't even have a referendum because the town council of a couple of thousand people said the community doesn't want a referendum. We'll just vote here on the council for them. It's not corrupted at all, especially when you think about the Nuclear Waste Management Organizations throwing each of those communities millions and millions and millions of dollars a year. No strings attached, of course. I mean, they're 18 years and haven't built anything with $26 billion. All you've done was throw money around. And a recount in South Bruce's referendum on hosting a deep geological repository for nuclear waste appears unlikely, despite a narrow margin separating the yes and no sides. Yeah, it was smaller than, it was 0.4%. And they said they weren't going to do it unless the town wanted them. A 0.4% difference. Electronic vote on top of that. You know how easy it is to hack that? Do you know how easy it is to hack that when you got $26 billion in your bank account? And when you're in charge? They're in charge. The town council didn't do the vote. A separate company paid for by the company that wants to put their nuclear waste in their farmland. You got it, like it's a blatant scam. It's so blatant. But everybody's like, well, we're just a little community. We don't get to make any decisions. The town council can make them for us because we're too stupid to tie our own shoes. How could we ever understand nuclear? The referendum to determine if South Bruce will become a willing host. When you win by 0.4%, is that a willing host? A willing host would be like 75% or 80%. Yeah, that's a willing host. But a discrepancy of literally nothing, and then call him a willing host. We've been covering this since a willing host to the biggest scam in Canada's history. And I didn't yuck it up over that one. Woo-hoo-hoo. They really are very low class, aren't they? Like, it's hard to appreciate the problem with the spent fuel that they're going to put down in the ground is eventually it'll melt down, because the problem with spent fuel is that it's splitting atoms. In other words, it's very hot. It creates heat by splitting atoms. Like a reactor core boils water to power 1 million homes and businesses by splitting atoms. Once you take it out of the reactor core 14 months later and put it in a fuel pool, it doesn't stop splitting atoms for millions of years. And so all of those atoms, instead of making power for 1 million homes, is now out trying to poison 1 million people because it's no longer contained, and it's put up tall, skinny vents at the top of these disease factories. Everything about the nuclear industry is predator. With over 50% of the eligible voters participating, again, that's not willing, right? You got 50% of the population. The high turnout meets the legal threshold for the outcome to be implemented without further challenges. Really, so there's no scrutiny allowed. With a 0.4% discrepancy between yes and no. They really are insane people, right? 18 years. They wanted to do it in South Bruce area because it's all farmland. The proposed Deep Geological Repository project led by the non-nuclear waste management organization, they haven't managed anything. All they've done is manage to delay it for 18 years, and they got $26 billion, and they haven't grown a single nickel of interest in 20 years. Where's all the interest in the $26 billion each year? Because they had $26 billion 18 or 20-something years ago. And you know how much they got today? $26 billion. You know how much it's going to cost to build a deep geological repository according to these? Whoever they might be. No one really knows who these people are. $26 billion. How can you not grow no interest for $26 billion in 20-something years? How does that actually work, I wonder? And they're supposed to be a non-profit. I'll say they're non-profit. They haven't got a nickel of interest in 20-something years on $26 billion. It's not non-profit. There's a bigger scam than the small modular reactor scam. Oh, and they're going to build it. The nuclear waste aims to store used nuclear fuel under farmland. What a coincidence, because that's where they put all the nuclear waste is under farmland. That's where they build all the nuclear power plants. Plop, right down in the middle of prime farmland. Farmland. Quite a coincidence that all nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms. All nuclear dumps are surrounded by farms. That's quite a coincidence, isn't it? And that downstream of that is just thousands of farms that are dependent upon that same river where they're pumping their poison. Their illegal poison. It's not illegal to poison you. Farmland. This is a satellite picture of a nuclear plant. If you take a satellite picture of all nuclear plants, this is what you're going to see. Surrounded by farms, as far as you can see. You really think they're not trying to poison you? When all the fuel, everything they're taking up to South Bruce, for instance, is vented. They want 15 acres, 1,500 acres of farm. They need 250 acres a square kilometer of the farmland for the facility to repackage the nuclear waste. In other words, the nuclear waste is everything is vented. Because you're not going to, if you introduce oxygen, if you seal it, introduce oxygen in, it's going to detonate. So everything is vented. Everything is vented on the highway that is surrounded, is just loaded with farms all the way up, 1,000 miles away. Both sides of the road, as far as you can see from an airplane, are going to be farms. Everything's going to be vented on that highway for 40-something years, right? When they get there, they're surrounded by 1,000 square miles of farmland, and they're plopped in the middle of prime farmland, which is going to be continuously farmed right up to their gate. That's what they do, because you can't contain the radiation. And so if you build it somewhere and you got no way of moving it away from the site, you're going to become, you won't be able to go to the site eventually because everything is so radioactive. So let's put it in their food and ship it out to the supermarkets regularly, and they'll be too sick to complain about us. We'll feed them Superman and Spider-Man and the Hulk and Simpsons, and they'll be too intellectually incapacitated when it comes to nuclear, because this subconscious refuses to look at anything unless it's got Homer Simpson attached to it. The non-nuclear waste management organization must now secure support from nearby indigenous communities before moving ahead with the site selection process. And don't think they haven't got 500 ways they're going to do that one. They just need a couple of people bribed, and oops, the ballot turned out to be in favor, right? So the Ojibwe nations, the Sons, they shouldn't be voting. If they do have a vote, it should be like a public vote where everybody's there at one time, everybody raises their hands. Because otherwise somebody is going to steal their entire future. Which, they have already done that with the Pickering and the nuclear waste, the nuclear dumps they got up there in the nuclear power plants they got in Ontario are already on a lot of Sun's land, right? So the Ojibwe Nation has not yet decided whether it would agree to consider a willing host, to be a willing host. Well, a willing host, according to the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, is 0.1% with difference, discrepancy between yes and no would be considered a willing host. As long as 50% of the population showed up that is eligible, which is even a smaller number, right? And you're talking about something that affects all Canadians. And you're talking about something that ultimately ends up in the Great Lakes, the third biggest aquifer on the friggin' planet for fresh water. This industry spends all of its time poisoning water and food. Salt and fresh water. It's obsessed with poisoning it permanently. Don't expect the natives communities who are saying they won't do it, but the nuclear waste industry has millions of dollars to bribe them, right? You're not growing any interest. You're not showing any interest in $26 billion. What are you doing with the money? Where's that interest? You're supposed to be a non-profit organization, but yet you got no interest at $26 billion after 20-something years? If they got to give some native community or some native $100 million cash in suitcases to win the vote, they'll do it. They won't hesitate. It means nothing to them. Because next year they got another $26 billion growing interest too. And they're going to grow a lot more. And to show you the pro-nuclear narrative only, and the majority of that is pure propaganda on top of that. Editorial, and like every facet of this nuclear industry is just what is going on this planet. First removal of nuclear fuel debris at the Fukushima plant. The first removal. So if you don't know much about this subject, then it seems like, wow, they're getting it done, right? And this is the editorial staff on top of that. One of the biggest medias in Japan. The first removal of nuclear fuel debris. The first removal of nuclear fuel debris at the Fukushima plant. That sounds like business, don't it? That sounds like they're getting it on. It's smaller than 5 millimeters. You can barely see it. It's the size of a grain of rice is what they're talking about. But when you read the headline, you're like, first removal of nuclear fuel debris, oh my God. Holy smokeroos. What happened? My volume off or something? I missed something. It wasn't a ring. First removal of nuclear fuel debris. Because we all knows what my ringer sounds like. Pretty hard not to know the difference. Less than 5 millimeters. But the arrogance to come out and frame the narrative that way. That's the norm. That's the norm for the industry. They probably got a whole bunch of their stocks probably climbed on that headline alone. The process to remove debris, which cost around $48 million to build a set of tongs that can go like that. And once they go down and pick up the fuel, you can never go near the tongs again. It was originally scheduled to start by 2021, commencing on the hard-won breakthrough. They're crazies, man. The piece smaller than a grain of rice was retrieved from the number 2 non-reactor. Number 2 melted down when it was liquefied reactor core, and the fuel pool burnt for days. So all of that's gone China syndrome deep into the earth. Reactor 3 and 4 detonated. They ejected their reactor cores or burnt them off directly into the biosphere, where now they're contaminating everything with replicating cells, attacking everything with replicating cells worldwide. Chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Authority, we have a hard time understanding why you would call themselves a regulatory authority when you're actually a non-regulatory authority. Japan's nuclear watchdog body. Are they like? They must be all blind on the panel or something. Only after we finish analyzing the sample, and the operation began in August, the piece was smaller than 5 millimeters, the size of a grain of rice. No employees at TEPCO were present during the preparation. It again highlights the old issue of delegating entire tasks and projects to subcontractors. No, TEPCO's not going to a nuclear meltdown site. Right alongside of Reactor 2 is was Reactor 3. That detonated and ejected reactor cores all over the site. And then right alongside of that is Reactor 4. They're both right alongside of Reactor 2, which is a Medusa 2. But it looks pretty good, right? So when people, they love using number 2. We covered that last week, was it? Reactor 2 quite a bit. Because Reactor 2 kind of looks like it's intact, right? So Reactor 2, you don't know the reason why Unit 2 released so much. See, when you look up Unit 2, this is kind of picture you see. Right alongside it was Reactor 3. That's what Reactor 3 done. It ejected the reactor core and the fuel pools right into the buildings. Not the last show, but the show before that, I covered that pretty extensive, didn't I? I do think I covered it last time too, pretty extensive. But the second last video, and the last video too, that's actually true. Masuka, a professor of environmental economics at the University of Tokyo, estimated how long it would take based on data concerning the 3 Mile Island nuclear accident in the United States in 1979. Estimated it would take 70 to 170 years to clean up Fukushima. Optimistic. Another very vital point is no method has been decided for disposal of the retrieved fuel debris. No method of disposal. Well, they got to get the willingness. These people are insane, right? You don't have to worry about disposing of the nuclear fuel from Reactor 4. There's nothing left to it. The building detonated, ejected the reactor core. You don't have to worry about Reactor 3. It ejected the reactor core and the fuel pools right into the buildings. That whole area is one big nuclear dump. There's no nuclear scientists. This is Reactor 2. So it looks better than Reactor 4, don't it? It looks better than Reactor 3, right? So let's show you that one. Like if you went and stood up inside of that contraption that got pushed up against the building, that's a lethal dose immediately. Getting close to the building, even 13 years later, would be a catastrophic dose. You got Reactor 3 on one side that detonated, Reactor 1 on the other side that detonated. They're all on the same street. And behind Reactor 3 and 4, towards me, is the common spent fuel pool. And that was pixelated completely out of the pictures that were released. And then the stack, which at the base was around 25 sieverts per hour, you can't go near that stack. Right? Look at the discrepancy. You see the stack is 2 and see where the building is 2. That stack over there, they chopped the top part off. It took them 3 years or something, was it? They couldn't do it. Nobody can go up there, lethal doses. So they had a mechanical system hooked up that they dragged up there, and it slowly cut the top off, and the top fell down on the ground. It or was lifted by the crane, rather. But you can't go near it. If you take a brick from the stack and bring it to Walmart, everybody in Walmart will be dead in 20 minutes. And you can fill a Walmart up every 20 minutes and everybody in there will die from that brick being in their building. So if you can't go near the stack, how the hell can you go near the reactor? And then this contraption they put there, that was designed off-site and then assembled right there. Yeah, they killed a few homeless doing it, but I can guarantee there's no academics, no scientists. We've never seen anybody there. Here we are, reactor number 2. The number 2 building at the Fukushima. So it looks a lot better. It looks a hell of a lot better than Reactor 4, which doesn't exist, and Reactor 3, which certainly doesn't exist. You look in close to reactor 4, there is no reactor 4. There's this little stump from a 19-story, 65-meter, 190-foot building. But hey, go and buy your stocks from NuScale. They won't rip you off until Wednesday or Thursday anyway. This Dana, it's hard to keep track of the laws. A tiny grain of nuclear fuel is pulled from the ruined Japanese nuclear plant in a step towards cleanup. A tiny grain. But the earlier headline didn't say a tiny grain, did it? That's the same media. First removal of nuclear fuel debris at the Fukushima plant. But it wasn't, was it? It was a tiny grain. It was so tiny, a grain of rice is a little bit bigger. That's what we're talking about. That's what they spent $48 million. And they went down to the United Kingdom, they got all the best brains together, and they built a tongue that would go down there and would close. You know, like a grappler or something like that. Something they invented, 300 years ago. It was a mechanical one. The Chinese do it, pick up their food, right? The extendable robot, calling a tongue, like where it just pinches. That's it. That's what it does. A telescope. They got a nickname on it. Should be the $48 million scam. Should be the name of it. It's not a robot. You can't call that a robot. It's an insult to call something like that a robot. It shows you that the Japanese are not very smart. If that's what, there it is there, look at this. It's just a set of tongs, right? It's probably about as big as the top of my two hands going like that. And it grabs a bit of fuel and it comes up, has this little tiny itty bitty grain of rice trapped inside of it. $48 million. On October the 3rd, it clipped a sample weight less than 3 grams, 0.1 ounces. 3 days later, the robot returned to the enclosed container as workers in full hazmat gear slowly pulled it out. Full hazmat gear. What, paper suits? That's what they've been calling. I'll bring up a picture of them. They're hazmat suits. They're the same suits you use to paint your house with. They call them hazmat suits. So we don't want a yellow helmet for Stinky the pro-nuclear robot we got. My robot's more of a fucking robot than their robot. At least mine got eyebrows. Right? It's got... Hello everybody, I'm Stinky the pro-nuclear scumbag. Oh my Dana. He'll get better. Right, Stinky? Hey, Stinky. Yeah, pro-nuclear scumbag. I'm Stinky the pro-nuclear scumbag. So wearing these paper suits apparently is a hazmat suit, according to the bizarre medias. Oh yeah. Constipated Party, Conference of Parties 29. Nuclear solutions for, like 2 years ago, nuclear wasn't allowed at constipated parties and big hoo-has. Which is UN. They're all UN anyway. IAEA is UN. ERPA is UN. The IPRC is UN. Unclear is UN. They got all kinds of subsidies. Nuclear is ridiculous. They got so many and they all agree with each other, right? They all get there and they all argue with each other, but they're all buddies. A lot of them are on the same panels. Different pins. So that starts on Tuesday? Nuclear Solutions, this is the International Atomic Energy Agency's website. I apologize. Get a shower after if you're smart. It's going to be down in Baku. As the world grapples with escalating impacts of climate change, it's 80 years of radioactive fallout. That's what climate change is radioactive fallout. And Fukushima was a pulse event, right? Here's climate change. So gas, oil, and coal emissions, carbon don't make plumes like this. This is a plume based on 15 days of radioactive fallout from Fukushima. All of this is created by Fukushima. But gas, oil, and coal emissions, you won't see models that like that. Even though they did last year, didn't they? They came out with a model and said it was carbon. And it looked, so scary. But it didn't make a plume like that. It was carbon coming out of each country, see? And it still didn't look anything like this. The only models that we ever seen that has those particular attributes is radioactive fallout. And you're talking about an invisible snowstorm pulsing energy every second for millions of years, almost at the speed of light. Pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second for millions of years. Coal doesn't do it. Carbon doesn't do that. The only thing that does that is radioactive fallout. And all nuclear fuel pools are making models like that each day. There's 1,000 of them worldwide. And just because you can't see it or smell it or hear it or feel it or taste it or touch it or perceive it doesn't mean it's not real. And doesn't mean it's not significant. There's nothing on the planet that has an autoimmune trigger to defend against this. And when you look at this is France's model based on 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137 and only based on 15 days of radioactive fallout from Japan. This is the French government. Monsieur Frenchy government. The French froggies. The International Atomic Energy Agency will showcase nuclear solutions for climate in some 40 events. So they're going all in. There are going to be 40 events at Constipated Party, Conference of Parties 29. 40 events. Last year they said they're going to triple nuclear worldwide. And we're further away we are today than we were last year on top of that. From that ever come to fruition. And you've seen the stocks go crazy. The stocks all went crazy worldwide and crashed a week after Conference of Parties 28 was over. It's ridiculous that they're able to get away with it. If there's no incentive not to be evil, after 80 years, what do you think is going to happen? The only way to describe everybody in the nuclear industry from our massive amount of experience is belligerent. This is a belligerent industry. They hate us and they hate the species. And they're taking them back with themselves like they see themselves as the untouchables. And they are, aren't they? And there's no lie out there saying they can't poison you with radiation. And so they can never be held accountable. Unless the population decides they're going to hold them accountable. The International Atomic Energy Agency will showcase nuclear solutions for climate action in some 40 events. Now, this is going to be a circus. We're probably going to cover everything, which will take place we'll do half Constipated Party and half nuclear each day. We'll go 11 days. It's 11 days straight. Last year they started on Halloween and it went for 13 days. Calling them demonic doesn't really do it justice on top of that. From the 11th to the 22nd of November. Oh, it starts tomorrow, I'm sorry. They'll showcase nuclear solutions for climate in some 40 events at Conference of Party 29. Oh, Atoms for Climate. Remember that last year? That circus? Atoms for Climate. My God. Is there anything as wicked as these people? Here's your Atoms for Climate. This is Fukushima hemorrhaging radiation. All of this is coming out of Fukushima. Steady coming out of Fukushima. It keeps coming out of Fukushima, and it never stops. And it doesn't take long, 2 weeks, and the whole planet is one great big plume of radiation. That's atoms for climate. Atoms that cause the climate change. They pulse energy every second. An invisible snowstorm of radioactive fallout covering the entire planet. And it's much worse than that. That model is only based on a fraction of the inventories that were lost. With the International Atomic Energy Agency's experts ready to answer questions about how nuclear energy contributes to. We need a drum roll for this. Net zero emissions. It's our emissions. Arrows. How are you going to power 1 million homes with no emissions? How's that work? Anybody know? You only need 5,000 employees. Their 5,000 trucks have no emissions. When you dig up the mountains and everything else, they have no emissions. But I'm just going to give you a small glimpse of the insanity of that particular statement. Because that's one of the most bizarre statements conceivable. Net zero emissions. Which was a paper written by Miles Allen, right? Net zero. And it's the most ludicrous. He got a nice comfy job at Cambridge, was it, in the United Kingdom, as a professor. I don't even think he's a full-time professor. I think he's an adjunct professor. The hair case is all I can tell you. Let's go this route. Well, you just can't keep up with the madness from this industry. Oh, carbon free. There she goes. Should have realized to put it under carbon free. There's nuclear so carbon free makes me want to cry. So proud of nuclear. So carbon free. Everybody should be like them. Pro-nuclear. I'm a pro-nuclear. I'm a pro-nuclear. This is Stinky, a pro-nuclear scumbag. Hi, Stinky. Hi, Dana. Are you a pro-nuclear scumbag? Just like my father. So, when you get so close to the ship and your Geiger counter is going run, what do you think has happened to the victims on the ship? They're just dumping it over. They've done that for 30 years. And they don't care about any activists. They dump it on top of them too. It's got to go off the ship. The reason you got to get it off the ship is because the people on the ship can't bring it back. Right? They're getting brutal doses. And the British, and not just the British, but the British in particular, what they done was insane. And those barrels, once they get down a couple of atmospheres, right, each atmosphere is 14.7 pounds per square inch. Once they hit a couple of atmospheres, they crumble, and it's released directly into the environment. It's insidious. You can't go to the graveyards in Japan. This was 7 years after Fukushima. Fukushima residents visited family graves, right, Stinky? Yeah, Dana's like a banana. Like when your graveyard looks like this, you don't go there. It was 7 years, and this headline shows up. Fukushima residents can visit the family graves. Yeah, you got to do a bit of wiggling. There's 150,000 sites like this at 1 ton bags. That's where the money's to in 1 ton bags. There's big money there. Right, Stinky? The pro-nuclear scumbag. Oh, there's a tree survived and for a little while. So they had to clear out, see, get the farmland cleared out. So up to 500,000 tons of sulfur from coal, 300,000 tons from oil, 200,000 tons from natural gas. In contrast, 1,000 watt megawatt nuclear plant releases no noxic gases or other pollutions, much less radioactivity per capita than it encountered from airline travel. A smoke detector, which are americium-241, which is nuclear waste. That's how they get rid of nuclear waste. Billions of smoke detectors. Or a television set. A television set airline travel's got nothing to do with radioactive fallout. Produces 30 tons of high-level waste spent fuel, 800 tons of low intermediate, about 20 cubic meters in all when compacted. The volume of 2 automobiles. If you took a little cup of it and put it at a subway in the panel on the wall, everybody walked past it will die that day for 1 million years. And that the atoms that they're splitting from it, I mean, they picked up 30 million 1 ton bags. 30 million 1 ton bags of radiation, which is only 3% of the land. like the whole production of it, and then the waste goes into the groundwater, into the water tables. You know how fast a drum will corrode in the ground? It's unbelievable. Same as the ocean. It's unbelievable how quick it happens. But they have many, many burn pits at the nuclear dump sites where they just burn it. And Japan has multiple incinerators at Fukushima. They even built a brand new one there. These people died they died that day. Or that within a few hours of doing this. They're spraying regions shortly after Fukushima. These guys would have died. Every mine creates chemical ponds. That's not a real pond, that's a chemical pond. And the outdoor fuel pools used to shoot the birds that would land in it so they didn't fly off and radiate something somewhere else. But at the same mines as anything else, only worse in many ways because of the chemicals. And then the whole process to get their hands on just uranium, the original uranium, before it can go into a chain reaction, before like just the process is so that it can be going into a reactor, is ridiculous. These chemical ponds, the Navajo has absurd amount of abandoned uranium mines, incredible toxic. You can't drink the water in just one area alone. All these communities, you had to stay away from the water. And then they continue for decades and decades just digging holes in the grounds and burying rusted nuclear drums at Hanford, at these pictures. And these pictures crack me up because they put all these are all missile silos, and they're in these little communities, right? And they're literally all on prime farmland on top of that. And you have to change the tritium-3H in it every 12 years because you can't contain it. On top of that, right? And so that farm food, and so if any country attacks any of these missile silos, they're not going to say they attacked the missile silo. No, the media won't say that. They say they attacked our boys in that little community and women. Are we going to stand by, or are we going to attack them back with nuclear? There's the legacy of nuclear right there. That sums it all up, don't it? Abandoning your communities means not like a banana and a potato chip or walking in the sunshine. Showing alphas and betas and gammas as superheroes to manipulate the most vulnerable of society. Suggesting that it has even a remote possibility of being carbon free. It's the most resource intensive industry and causes the most harm. If your gas plant, power plant, or coal plant breaks down, do you got to abandon community after community after community? They should have abandoned half of Japan. They would have if they acknowledged reactor 4 melted. They would have abandoned half of Japan. And if you look at the dumps, everything is vented into the communities. And how nuclear science can address climate, back to Constipated Party, Conference of Parties 29. And how nuclear, because he said it was carbon free, I had to go down that road that time. I apologize, but what choice do you have, right? And how nuclear science can address climate-related challenges, the food security and water resources. All the water is tritiated anyway because it's the emissions for 80 years and all the dumping. And ocean health. Well, we went out and done the marine research expeditions. There is no ocean health. I gotta reinstall that stuff. Let's keep going here. Conference of Party 29 will build on a global consensus that has emerged at the Constipated Parties 28 in Dubai last year, / Conference of Parties. Calling them Constipated Parties, I think, is more appropriate. I know it's not a very nice thing to say, but these are, if they were people, it wouldn't be very nice to say, but these are not people we're talking about. These are creatures that hate your guts and the 8 million species. At Constipated Party 28 last year, the world agreed nuclear power. The world didn't agree. A handful of politicians did. Nuclear power must be part of the transition to net zero, said Ralphie Grossi. He only got the job because the last guy died. And he's despicable. He claims Fukushima never released nothing. You know, minus 30 million one-ton bags they picked up, Dana. You know, he doesn't even acknowledge that. The International Atomic Energy Agency supports newcomer countries in establishing. We covered that they had this. They had the first annual nuclear power plant meeting earlier this year. We came out and mocked it for like 3 hours or something. We went through the whole thing, the whole presentation. There was all these so-called leaders, and the pandering was really something to see. Newcomer countries in establishing safe, secure, safeguarded, and sustainable, safe, secure, safeguarded. So safe nuclear power, sustainable nuclear power programs. Whenever you read the International Atomic Energy Agency's bulletins or stories, you're left with this weird premonition that it was you just had visited a real evil spot. The International Atomic Energy Agency supports newcomer countries in establishing safe nuclear power programs. Also follows the first ever nuclear energy summit. That's what I was looking for, which we covered. It was hosted in Brussels. We covered the videos of it, and we covered all the people. It was really pathetic, eh? None of them come true on their promises, by the way. Not a single one came through on their promises. Not one. 36 countries, was it? 30 countries, but there was more to it than that. Where leaders from more than 30 countries reaffirmed their commitment to nuclear energy as a way to reduce carbon emissions and meet the development goals. What do you mean development goals? To reduce carbon emissions. Reaffirmed. I swear on nuclear that I will never tell a lie to nuclear, just to the population, as a way to reduce carbon emissions. It's the most resource-intensive thing in human history. The most resource-intensive. There's nothing more resource-intensive than nuclear, period. Let me see if I can fix Dana. Break me up a little bit. Give me some colors. So I don't look. Let me see what it looks like on the big shot screen. The big screen. Have we got that working tonight? Is that going to work tonight? We had problems with that. We just tried that. The transitions gave me a hard time last week. They wouldn't. Well, that's not it, Dana. Oh, I think we're in business. Look at that. Doggy. Essential call for investments. So now this one is about promoting investment. A central theme of Conference of Parties 29 will be the pressing need for increased climate finance. Increased climate finance / money for nuclear industry. They're to robbing all the investors, so there's no money left there for the nuclear industry. So they're going to use Conference of Parties, which is UN, which is the 195 militaries. Eisenhower called it the military-industrial complex, right? George Bush called them New World Order. Let's play that clip. That's always fun. George W. Bushy. So I'm glad he's dead and gone. Nothing personal. Okay, a little bit. Where's George Toe? Oh, there he is. Let me check the volume now, because I done the editing on this, so the volume could be a bit loud. Here we go. He's going to call the United Nations the New World Order over and over and over.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
So he's saying the United Nations is... Dana, I'm waiting for it. New World Order. Eisenhower said there the military-industrial complex, 195 militaries. I can see why he was leading that way. A UN report released on the 28th of October, military-industrial complex, New World Order report released on the 28th of October indicates that the current policies and investments fall far short of what is needed to keep the global temperature rise below 1.5 centimeters. The only way you're going to do it is you can put all the emissions from nuclear plants for 80 years and the pulse event from Fukushima back in the genie bottle, which is the Paris Agreement. And what do you mean the Paris Agreement? I didn't agree on anything. I don't know anybody in Canada agreed upon this. Right? The UN has a meeting in Paris, and then they call it the Paris Agreement. And what has France ever done for anybody else besides radiate them? I mean, France, the Paris Agreement, who refused to recognize the French Polynesians for setting off a Hiroshima bomb worth of radiation, Nagasaki bomb, plutonium bomb worth of radiation every week for 12 years. And where everybody there has got some manifestation of radioactive fallout, diseases and illnesses and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries. The United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, United Nations this, the International Atomic Energy Agency that, the UN this, these are all the same company. Oh yes, the small modular reactors. Is the nuclear industry using a fake nuclear renaissance to loot unsuspecting small modular reactor stock investors? So now we know why, right? Now we know why the bottom fell out last week, because another pump and dump is going to be the next 11 days starting tomorrow, with conference of parties pushing small modular reactors. And all the investors are going to be out there buying the stocks who didn't buy it last time. And in 11 days, they're going to pull the rug out from under them. They're going for the big one, this one, because Christmas is right around the corner. We know the nuclear industry likes to celebrate. They want to go down to Mexico and get a dozen girls and all kinds of straws for their noses and have a good time. They've thrown everything at the nuclear industry. The industry still can't build anything. It just takes, the money just disappears. The billions and trillions just keep disappearing every year. And the nuclear industry, we need investors so they can rob them. They can cash in their stocks. When the investor cashes in because they lost all their money and they try to salvage something, guess who buys the stocks? The same people who just robbed them. Right? And they just made a 40%, 50% profit. Well, if you bought NuScale, you made a 50% profit. So if you had $1 million worth of stocks, and lots of them did, they just got $500,000 free. So they spend the other $500,000, buy the stocks again. Next pump and dump is conference of parties, obviously. Barely any time in between the last pump and dump, eh? Grossi will co-host a high-level event with the government of the United States of America on small modular reactors. Here it goes again, man. They're setting the stage right there, look. Which offers flexible, cost-effective options. Flexible for powering small energy grids, making them suitable for developing countries. What are you talking about? Anything small modular reactors can do, geothermal can do better. And quicker. And like 10 years... It'll take 10 to 15 years to build anything, but geothermal, you can have it ready in a few months. Why would you even look at small modular reactors when you got geothermal? Small modular reactors don't exist, first off. Let me see if I can find my way back. Nuclear is only good for one thing. That's scamming the shit out of you and killing you with radioactive fallout. It's really good at that. Even commercial ships for data centers, intensive energy industries, and even commercial ships. Really? You want to put a bunch of ships on the ocean with reactors on them? How many ships sink every year? It's an absurd amount. And like, where are you going to get the manpower it takes to put on all these ships and train them at the IAEA? Is it? These are lunatics. On the 12th of November, the day after tomorrow, on Tuesday, Grossi will take the stage with his high-level representatives from the United Nations and the Food and Agricultural Organization / United Nations and the World Trade Organization / United Nations. Or at least the members on it are from UN, right? And prominent speakers from the government, the private sector, and financial institutes. Yeah, they usually have like 40,000 government officials that go down there and pander to UN while they're there. Because this is a whole atoms for food. Like, why, in goodness gracious, would you use anthropogenic man-made radiation around food? It really is insidious, growing food security. You can't do anything unless it's nuclear, Dana. The whole planet needs to learn it. That no matter what it is, only nuclear has a solution. Nothing else could possibly work. Only anthropogenic man-made radiation. Which, by the way, nothing on the planet has an autoimmune trigger to defend against. It destroys everything with replicating cells. Why would you use that? Why would you promote that? Where's your allegiance to humanity and the 8 million species, Grossi? I know that's just trying to be funny. The hateful International Atomic Energy will participate in several events on glacier retreat, again caused by so much radioactive fallout that the ice can't crystallize anymore. A significant indication of climate change that it profoundly affects water resources. There's an enormous amount of water in the Great Lakes. You got that already destroyed. It's completely surrounded by nuclear dumps and nuclear power plants. All they do is attack everything with water in it, fresh and salt. But the glaciers had a really important part because the water running down through all the streams and lakes and estuaries when it got to the coastlines, it regulated the temperature during droughts. And it also regulated temperatures on the coastline. Of course, if you look at the west coast of Canada, the glaciers are gone. Like, they're gone. They're actually gone, right? They used to be there all year long for thousands and thousands of years. Post-Fukushima, within a year and a half, they were gone. We know because we went out and done the research expeditions on that coastline. These events will emphasize the importance of monitoring and assessing the effects of glacier melt. They literally taken over every facet of everybody's lives on this planet, and nobody's. They do it. They have all these subsidy companies, and the next thing you know, they're the only ones that you're allowed to refer to. Like, this is a non-elected entity that is co-opting the sovereignty of the entire planet, country after country after country. There's 195 countries. That doesn't mean it doesn't affect the rest of them. Their structure is the same as McDonald's. Right? They're the same kind of company as McDonald's. They're no different, right? They just have a whole bunch of subsidy McDonald's, smaller versions, like IAEA, World Health Organization. And criticizing any of them would get you banned on most of the social media. If you're not criticizing, but come out and denying their narratives, come out and arguing their narratives. It's not allowed. I've never seen nothing like it. There is no social media without the UN with the ultimate say. And that's what all the governments are regurgitating UN's narratives. Right? Because they get their Ponzi elected, and then their Ponzi signs official papers that brings their narrative as the first narrative and the only narrative that we're allowed to consider. That's the most dangerous route conceivable. These events will emphasize the importance of monitoring and assessing the effects of glacier melt. Why is it United Nations is the only organization that is recognized in 195 countries as an authority. Why would you do that? Why you can't come up with authorities in your own country? You have to use this entity that is an actual military-industrial complex. Is the quickest way to destroy all of your freedoms and sovereignty. On the 18th of November, the IAEA will host an event on leveraging science, technology, and innovation for climate solutions. Again, right there, and the 18th is on not this Monday coming, but next Monday. This runs till the 22nd, which is Friday, not this week, but the following week. So all of this week, all the weekend, and all of next week to Friday, I'm going to have to try to do some kind of show. And on the weekends, they're going to be at odd times. And they'll only be like an hour maybe. I'll do them earlier in the day. Nuclear energy stocktake heading into Conference of Parties 29. Finance lags behind ambitions. So you can see they're pushing. Now the Clean Air Task Force is the industry. This is the industry. This is just one of their sites. Clean Air Task Force. Promoting nuclear. And let me tell you something. Nuclear energy stocks. Heading to the Constipated Party 29, finance legs beyond ambitions. And you see the two people who wrote the story down there? But what you don't see is their experts, for instance. And you got a whole alphabet soup there of alphabets. Well, let's just have a little boo at these people. How many people have they got there? Foundation giving, energy economists, regional associate. Look at all these people. These are all wealthy people. These are all the pro-nuclear community. Look at what they got put. This is not a game. These guys means business, okay? They're well established. They're all over the place. And they're big guns. That's who these people are. These are big, big guns. They've got an enormous amount of power, influence, and they're all wealthy. Every one of them. And they all hate us for some reason. These are the furthest you can get from planet-oriented people. These are anti-human, anti-species. These all got an agenda. So that particular organization, Clean Air, and let me get through the rest of it, we'll go back to them. That's some scary shit you're looking at them. They're the most disconnected people conceivable is what we're looking at. They couldn't give a shit about anybody, only what's in it for them. Every one of them. It's scary when you look at them. You start appreciating that this is a Director of Climate Policy Innovations. David Yellen. Look at him. If your daughter brought him home, you would pull the gun on him right away, wouldn't you? The Clean Air Task Force. And brother and sister, they're incredible task forces, what they are. They mean business. These are rock and roll, ready to rock and roll on the drop of a hat. They are well financed, incredibly articulated, and well positioned in the governments and industry to capitalize at your expenses and the expenses of the 8 million species. They are literally nobody's friend. And I can't even raise $100. They probably leave $100 tip at the fucking supermarket. Oh, sorry, sir, we don't take tips here. It's okay. I got lots of with the nuclear industry. It's okay, put it in your pocket. Advanced nuclear energy. Our work. Advanced nuclear energy, small modular reactors. Oh, look at them. Carbon capture. I do believe that they're capturing the carbon for greenhouses and for the underground habitats and trips to the space in the future. And fusion energy. So there's no such thing as the advanced nuclear reactors. But there's enough of them there, they can loot and loot and loot. Winnipeg is hosting a youth nuclear peace summit. They do that a lot up there, where the students actually get educated a little bit on anti-nuclear. It's an unusual one, eh? Because Winnipeg is one of the homes of Canada of the uranium mines, right? So it's interesting to see any dissenting voices coming out of that. That's a very impoverished province too. The nuclear industry wrecked it so they can have it all for themselves. Students across the globe are leading a discussion in Winnipeg on the threat posed by nuclear weapon. The biggest threat is nuclear power plants and nuclear fuel, the constant emissions from the fuel pool. Now, I was only joking when I said I can't raise $100. Clearly, we raise a little bit all the time, right? But we only have a couple of people that are supporting this operation, right? It's just brutal on them. And on my other site with 25,000 subscribers, 24,800 for 5 years. My other site YouTube channel had 24,800 subscribers for 5 years. Never gained one, never lost one. No censorship on Dana. So when we were looking for spiders and we discovered they were all missing, we were 400 miles into the woods and still can't find any spiders. And finally got a signal and I put out a little short video to tell the story, and then boop, there goes my channel. No strikes, no nothing. So the current channel we're on is unbelievable. And what I do is I record the shows and then I post it up at my BitChute channel that night, tonight or the next morning, right? Because YouTube won't let me download it for 12 hours. When I do, it's always longer. They added something into it. And comment sections disappears for 12 hours. My video can't be downloaded for 12 hours. And we've been looking at this since we've been on this site. Clearly, they're putting something in the video before they let it be downloaded. And they're editing the video, too, before it can be downloaded. So I put the videos up on my BitChute channel, Unmolested by ShitTube. Tucker Carlson claims nuclear technology was created by demonic forces. Isn't that interesting, eh? I would say he's probably right, isn't he? Whatever it was, it's insidiously evil. Nuclear weapons are demonic. It's not just nuclear weapons, nuclear power plants. And there's no upside to them at all. And anyone who claims otherwise is either ignorant or doing the bidding of the forces that created nuclear technology in the first place, which were not human forces, obviously. And then he said, during the same conspiracy-laden episode, so if you think outside the box, you're a conspiracy. If you think outside their box, the mainstream media, which is a perpetual liar, right? It's disgusting what the nuclear industry... Let me give you an example of their insanity. What I'm going to show you right now is the very definition of insane. This is ABC Australia's Cecilia Vega, CNN, BBC Rupert Winfield Hayes, CBS Seth Dorn. These are videos where they're claiming they're on top of the building to your left, 100 feet above the stump, the nuclear meltdown, and 8 fuel pools melted down, claiming that they're getting all the fuel out of the pool on a building that don't exist. If that's not insane, what the hell is? UK prepares to dismantle its first nuclear power submarine. They were going to sink 19 of them there about 2 years ago. They were going to take them out and scuttle them on the continental shelf, right? And then people found out about it and there was blowback. And they're like, nah, we're just talking out of our mouth. Swiftsure will be the first decommissioned UK nuclear power submarine to be fully dismantled. Swiftsure, the USS, or no, the steamship, this was nuclear submarine, and disposed of. So they're claiming that it'll be the world's first, 90% of the structure and components to be reused or recycled. The first time ever. Like, everything is bombarded with neutrons, right? They got 20-something nuclear reactor submarines sitting there They don't even know how to decommission it. Now the first one they're going to decommission, 90% of it is going to be recycled, reused. I can only imagine forks and knives and anything that can poison you, that's what they'll recycle it into. The waste has been processed for removal from the site through the Rostin's Active Waste Management Facility. Active waste. This is a world's first. But we don't have any documentation of any of these processes. UK parks a nuclear bomber fleet on Iran's doorstep in a warning to Tehran. And a warning to Tehran, eh? So they went down and they got painted by Russian anti... their jet fighters got painted. They never even made it across the border of Iraq, right? They turned and went back. It was all this hoo-ha, and they didn't even make it into Iran's territory. They fired their missiles from outside. And as far as I know, the majority of them were picked off by the Russians' anti-missile silos or battery. I can't remember the name of it. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd spokesman with Israel Defense Minister Gallant, who just got fired on the August 11th, the Pentagon said. Austin reiterated Washington's commitment to defend Israel in the call. If Iran decides to take out Israel's fresh water, electricity, and everything else, there's nothing Israel can do. They already showed that with their last missile silo, which wasn't like Israel started this, right? A long time ago. Then they used Stuxnets to try to destroy all the reactors which was the first real cyber attack on a nuclear. And Israel has a legacy of blowing up nuclear reactors, right, in Iran and Syria, was it? Libya? I can't remember. We'll get to it in a bit, maybe. Satellite images appear to show the United States deployed nuclear-capable bombers. If Iran wants to, they can take out all of those bombers in a heartbeat. And it's literally the stupidest thing I ever seen was to park these things on Iran's border. Because Israel's terrified they're going to get the shit kicked out of them. Israel's never fought a real military. They never fought anybody that has the Air Force or Navy and thousands of tanks and artillery and et cetera, et cetera. They never fought an actual real military. And they're being slaughtered. There's like 4,000 dead or something. 4,000 soldiers with arms and legs missing alone in the last week and a half, 2 weeks from Lebanon, where they created 1 million homeless people now in Lebanon, hoping that they attack the civilian population in the hopes that they'll turn against Hezbollah or Hamas or whatever, right? But that is not. They know it's not going to work. It's collective punishment. It's a war crime, right? 6 bombers, nuclear bombers, parked in an open area, and at least 5 of them capable of carrying nuclear weapons. Air Force commander of a nuclear missile maintenance at Maelstrom fired after investigation. He got no respect, apparently. So he got fired. We see a lot of the nuclear subs and everybody else getting fired, eh? The captains are demoted or transferred. U.S. to decommission S5G naval reactor. They're going to decommission this reactor. About time, isn't it? Like 50 years or something has been sitting there at the Idaho National Laboratories. Man, they've had so many meltdowns there. That sits on one of the biggest aquifers in that part of the country that feeds tens of thousands of farms. And it's completely polluted. That's the norm, though. All the national laboratories are built on the biggest aquifers in that part of the country. What the hell's going on with Sunshine Wolf? It's not normal. Let me check this out here. Oh, that's the right site. Just having a bit of fun, Herbie. Hello. Hello, everybody. Hugs, everybody. Dancing in the dark at the Idaho National Laboratories. Well, I think that's about it for us tonight. We'll pick up again tomorrow night. So that was a prototype reactor. It was shut down in 1995, rather. It was defueled in 1999, 4 years later. And so 24 years later, now they're going to finally decommission it. But a lot of the times this is just, they're just talking to the side of their heads. Could be another decade before they actually get around to touching it. So it's, anything at Idaho National Laboratories is a disaster, right? And so is the nuclear industry using a false nuclear renaissance to loot the unsuspecting small modular reactor stockholders? Let me just, I gotta clear the palette here first. So tomorrow, when we pick up, I don't end up redoing shows. Because that's how it rolls around here, right? And, where are we to here? But we definitely could use a few donations. We're in bad trouble. We're hurting over here. We got everything working, though. We're back up and running. And unfortunately, they wouldn't take the hard drives back, which I should have realized it. Because once you open the package, who's to know if there's a virus on it, right? And so that was a killer. That killed me. Wasn't expecting that to happen to me. And it's going to be what it's going to be, but we got to come out and hit the nuclear industry constantly, because. And we got remember the last video, we were having a hard time searching. The type keyboards wasn't working, didn't seem to be working. It turned out to be the keyboards. Yeah, I changed the keyboards today. Today I was trying to. This morning I successfully reloaded quite a bit of stuff. We got at least a week work ahead of us yet to reload stuff back onto this one. Yeah. So let's go ahead and close the poll down. Is the nuclear industry using a false nuclear renaissance to loot unsuspecting small modular reactor stock investors? Well, yes, you are, Dana. And you're talking about incredible robbery every couple of weeks we see now for 13 years. It's just the small modular reactors in particular is like 6 years, but the uranium went bust, right? When Fukushima's 4 reactors and 8 fuel pools melted down, there's around 36 reactor cores melted down, and they successfully hid that from the population, right? And so we got 100%, 30 votes. Thank you, everybody. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. just a reminder for people. If you go to my front page and you go to my live, because everything is live, you go to the live shows, go underneath the live shows and click more. If you scroll all the way down, you'll see there's only 2 ways to donate to me. They're directly to me. You can't make a mistake. So one's directly to my PayPal account, and the next one is the nuclearproctologist.org. And that's the world needs to help, right? I can't fund this whole operation on my own. I went out on a limb last week because our whole operating system got taken down. And the hard drives were 2 of them were killed. And so we had to just go for it, right? And try to rebuild. I had to reinstall everything. It was brutal. Done it all weekend, got everything up and running. Ran into a few more problems last week. At the end of the week, but over the weekend we got that worked out. And so any help would be appreciated. And that was a difficult time for me. But regardless, we'll be back tomorrow night. I got to close the show out. One of James Lucid's songs, his original songs. He's got a whole bunch posted up at his YouTube channel. Anti-nuclear songs. He's got enough to do multiple albums. All kinds of different genres. And the software he's using is friggin' incredible. We'll play one of his... this song we're going to play is about a troll from Japan. Not a troll, but an actual paid thug from Japan who's been stalking us for over a decade. And that is a big hit with everybody around here. And so you can go to his site, download his music, and cut it in MP3 and put it on your kids' phones. I can guarantee you there's quite a few songs that they're going to like. The ones they don't, they'll delete. The rest of them they'll keep and they'll share. And next thing you know, you got a revolution. And music is a great revolution. Here's one of James's songs. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Have a great night. And hugs for everybody. And we'll see you in the next show. Take care.
In the Tokyo Bureau, swirling smoke and neon beams. Chicago division, fueled by heated dreams. Calm down, Charlie calls in, voice smooth as silk. Says, Dana, you're dreaming, don't cry over spilt milk. On Dana Durnford's show, the chatter's turning wild, but Charlie shoots it down with that cool cat style. Unit 3's no killer, no harm to see life. He chuckles in the static, cuts through the strife. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show. With a snap and a grin, Charlie's voice so clear scatters the dread, dispels all the fear. Mux didn't hurt, he croons with a sigh. Science is for thinkers, not a whim or lie. Though Dana and the crowd may shout and roar, Charlie's unfazed, he's heard it all before. His swinging rationale, like a soothing song, says, hold on to logic, we gotta stay strong. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show.